Got the notice.
Okay.
YouTube must have cleared out the clog lines on these notifications.
Yeah? Well, you getting a bunch in?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, we're finally getting them. It's good. My phone's almost dead, so
Yeah,
not gonna
what?
get much
You
there.
didn't charge it up throughout the night?
I
Forget
forgot.
to do that?
I forgot. What are you going to do?
Sometimes that happens.
All right. Looks like everybody's raring and excited and
Your
waiting
mom.
for us.
Your mom is
Your
in the
mom,
chat.
Nicole.
Your mom.
Isn't that the best insult, like in grade school? Your mom. And
Your
it's like,
mom.
and people get so upset over that. And your mom what?
Your mom's awesome.
Finish the statement. Would you? All right. Your mom also wears combat boots. That was a good one.
I know, I did. I had
a fanny pack?
I had a pair of Doc Martens and a lot of flannel
Oh, yeah?
in college.
So Mateo's mom wears big boots. All right. Hello, everybody. It's Friday Live. I'm Mark.
And I'm Nicole.
And we're starting late today, so we apologize for
9
that.
minutes.
Still,
The kids.
it's 9 times as late as we were last time.
The kids know that school is getting ready to start.
So they're in slow motion.
They are in super slow motion and they don't want to go to daycare or summer school.
Yep.
It's like, got to work.
So let's get started here. We actually don't have anything to show off or demo. We're just going to get right into the good stuff. I do want to mention really quickly, the Breakbox Project is underway. Videos started to release this morning, and today is your last day to get that pre-order pricing. So if you want the big discount, you got to get on it today, last day.
That if you bundle it with 2 other pre-orders, that Breakbox comes down to $30.
Holy majoli.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's the thing with the
really
guild.
good
Thanks. If you don't know this already in the guild, the best way to save money is to bundle projects. Whether you're buying old projects that have been around for a long time or the pre-orders, they're 2 classifications, so you can't mix and match them and get the bundle price. You got to be in one or the other. But if you bundle it with 2 other pre-orders, you get like 40% off. So huge savings. Definitely something to take advantage of and get on it because it's going to go away tonight.
And as an update, the guild scholarships, if you applied, I have a committee that is helping me.
That's good. You need a
Because
committee.
it is a lot of pressure to go through 73 applications and pick.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. So, are you turning up the volume?
Yeah, someone's asking to turn up the volume. This thing is stupid.
I think it's already at the max, Harry. You're going to have to turn up the volume on your side.
Well, sometimes the mixer gets a little bit.
A little wonky? Oh, there is a
I could juice it a little bit more.
Juice it.
All right, so question-wise, I've got, I haven't previewed any of these, unfortunately, so we get all of our questions from 2 places. We get them from Patreon, and by the way, if you want to help us out on Patreon with a recurring donation, it's patreon.com/woodwhisperer, and if you do that, you can actually get your questions on the show in my list, and then Nicole gets the rest of the questions from the YouTube chat. She yanks them from there, and
So you might ask a question right now,
and it'll get on the show.
and it might get on the show towards the end of the show.
Somewhere towards the end.
But
Jordan,
if you ask early, I get them in.
So we got a couple new people to thank, Jordan DeMoss and Alejandro Araya.
Hey, Jace.
So thank you so much, guys, for helping us out over on Patreon. We really appreciate it. So let me get to some questions
Jason's here too.
Yeah, Jason's here.
He has a new Instagram account.
Oh boy, you're going to promote that?
So you want to follow Jason. I know a lot of people have questions like, who's Jason? What does he do?
Who is this Jason character?
So we created an Instagram account for him called TWWJason, and you can get a behind-the-scenes look at his journey with this. I mean, he's fresh. And new to woodworking.
He still has that new Jason smell.
Well, you get to see it through his eyes,
Yeah.
which is kind of neat. And I think, for you, it's a nice little breath of fresh air.
It is. It's great.
Unless he's farting.
That's true. Well, sometimes we have those wars and we fart back and forth. We're being very productive. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
We are pretty much, we're very close to finishing this storage bench, the Greene and Greene storage bench build. And we started it on Monday, and we're actually putting the finishing touches on it today. And that's kind of record time for me on anything.
Amazing.
So let's get to some questions here.
Let's do it.
Again, I haven't previewed these, so some of them I may not have great answers to. Mike Davies wrote in, he says, wondering what your decision-making process is in terms of which joint to use in which situation. Strength first, I guess. But if they're all more than strong enough for the specific application, how do you decide? A lot of times, Mike, it is a question of what do I want to do? some joints are more fun to make than others. Some maybe comparable strength, but if I prefer making bridle joints over a classic mortise and tenon, then I might just choose the bridle joint. Looks definitely factor into it. If it's something that's going to be visible in the final product, the bread box is a great example. That's one that didn't really require through mortise and tenons, but I wanted to do that. I wanted that look, and that's why I chose that, and strength wasn't really part of that conversation. Dados would have been fine for something like that. So, it's a number of things that go into my decision-making matrix, but a very big one is simply, what do I feel like making? And as you get more into this stuff, you'll decide which are your favorite joints to make and which ones are your least favorite.
Rick Child says, can we see the root vegetable bins?
Inside the house?
On the last show.
Oh yeah.
I think I said I wanted you to build one.
Okay. Sure. Okay, Eric.
Do Brian's super chat while it's up, because I like
okay.
when we can put questions up on the screen. It's kind of cool.
Oh, I like it too, Nicole. I don't like that it puts his amount there.
Oh,
It's
that's kind
of weird.
Yeah.
Brian says, I believe you have called alder the poor man's mahogany before. That's not correct. I did say the poor man's cherry. Can you tell how you get alder to resemble mahogany, stain or finish? Well, no, because it's cherry, not mahogany. You can't really make alder look like mahogany. You can certainly stain it to get a mahogany-like color, but you're not going to be able to get that grain pattern of mahogany. That's just something that is specific to mahogany and that family of various trees that actually have that kind of grainy sort of look to it. So alder is not going to be your choice for that.
So what's an alternative to mahogany?
Well, there are different types, and mahogany is one of those broad classifications of various species. I don't always know all the specifics, but if you want something like mahogany, there's your African mahogany, which is, again, another broad term that comes in, and you might actually have a mix of things in there. Sapele is a good option. And on this project, we actually have a mixture of African mahogany and, I don't know the exact pronunciation, it's either Sippo or Sipo mahogany. And that's a great one as well. And they all kind of look the same. But Sapele might be an option if you're looking for something that's a little bit more cost effective. All right.
Oh, Lord.
I got one here from Eric. He says, I recently trimmed too much off the sides of an oak tenon trying to fit it into the mortise. Last night I decided to try fixing it rather than leaving it too loose. Stuck cut-off material to the sides of the tenon using Type-On thick CA glue and recut and trimmed it. It worked well, but do you think I made a mistake going with CA glue over PVA for a structural joint? It's a thin layer, but does CA glue break down faster over time or anything like that? I don't think it's a mistake in this case, Eric, because you're going to put glue all over that thing and you're going to shove it into a mortise, and then everything's just going to it's all going to be one, right? So I think if this were something that were hanging out in space and you just use CA glue, I think that might, the sort of brittle nature of CA glue, you might have an issue if something hit that, it could just pop off at some point. But since this is going into a mortise and then slathered with glue, and that little strip is now coated in glue and up against the side of the mortise wall, I don't think you have anything to worry about. You technically, when you're constructing that joint, if you didn't even want to glue those pieces on, you could have put them down into the mortise and then put your tenon in between them. And if there was glue all the way around, you're basically using them as like shims to eat up some of that space. And I think you would have had a perfectly strong joint. Even if you didn't pre-glue those to the tenon and put them in that way, I think you would have been fine. So yeah, I think you're fine.
Got a question here from Costas A. Hey, hello, and thanks for your efforts you guys put in. My question is, do you really need a fancy marking knife, or can a utility knife do?
I do believe you want a fancy marking knife, and the reason comes down to the bevels. Most razor blades, or what you're going to find in a utility knife, typically have a bevel on both sides. It's that bevel that really changes things and can mess it up. So if you're getting really picky about your joints and you want to know exactly what that line is doing when you make your scribe, you want to know what's going on with those bevels. If there's a bevel up against a guide that you're actually cutting your line with, if you have the bevel like this, your line actually winds up being away from the guide that you used. If you have a marking knife, which typically they have a bevel on one side and a flat face on the other, you put the flat face up against whatever guide you're using to strike your line, and that's going to be right up against that edge, nice and crisp and very, very accurate. So I don't think you necessarily need a super fancy marking knife. You can get an inexpensive one, And if you could find other types of things like X-Acto knives or whatever, if you could find those with blades that have a single bevel on it, then you're in business. But I do think a proper marking knife is advantageous. Okay. It's so hard. Some of these are questions and some are just comments. Alejandro Araya, he just joined on Patreon, by the way.
Thank you.
He says, hey guys, Costa here.
Oh.
Was that the person we
I
just
think
put his
so.
question
Yeah,
up?
Costa A. Yep.
Okay. My question is, how far do you take your SketchUp models before you send them to make plans for the guild? Also, what SketchUp version do you use? I have one of the SketchUp Make versions. I think it's SketchUp 2017 Make version, so it is a desktop version. It kind of depends on the project. If I can sketch it and get the rough idea, I take it pretty far, but I usually don't model all the joints. So if I'm trying to get curves, if I'm trying to get relative part sizes, so I get it pretty close, and then I send it to Brian, and Brian fills in all the gaps. If I'm doing like a frame and panel, I won't sketch in, the groove that goes around and put the panel in place. I'll just have my rails and stiles in place, and then I'll send it to Brian and say, I need that to be a 1/4 inch groove, stopped on, the stiles, stopped on the stiles, through on the rails, and kind of just give him in text instructions, and then he goes in and fills the gaps for me.
We should make note, your shirt.
Yes.
Foxhall Woodworks is in the chat room.
Oh, is he? Hey, man, what's happening?
Just note at your shirt and say, Irma Gerd.
Irma Gerd. The kids wear his shirts all the time.
Yeah, they do.
I saw Ava was wearing one the other day, and Mateo, his favorite color is orange, so he wears that one all the time. Brody Bricky wrote in. He says, it was great seeing you both at AWFS. I'm sure the show was exhausting. Your Greene and Greene themed storage bench on IG makes at least 4 Greene and Greene inspired projects you or Daryl have done. Are we soon to see others? A themed room in the house is within our grasp. Thanks for all you do. You know what? Not that I swore off Greene and Greene, but I did say I don't really want to do a lot of Greene and Greene. This particular bench, I really just wanted it to be Greene and Greene inspired. My goal was to not do ebony plugs, was to not necessarily go to that dark red finish. But as we started to get into the project, it just kept going further and further, and next thing you know, it turned into a Greene and Greene piece. So there are still some details that are left out. We did wind up putting in ebony plugs, so I guess it's fair to call it Greene and Greene inspired at this point. But yeah, we've done a lot of Greene and Greene in the past, more than 4, I think, if you grand total everything. But
this is not ours.
But this one isn't even mine. Yeah, this is going in Jason's house. I don't know that I'll be doing another Greene and Greene piece after this one because, like I said, I already told myself I wouldn't even do this one as Greene and Greene, but here we are. So I think
what you gonna do?
Future Greene and Greene stuff, for the most part, unless it kind of sort of accidentally happens like this one did, we're really going to be focusing on Daryl's Greene and Greene pieces to add more to the collection in the guild.
Because Daryl has the chest of drawers coming up in 2020.
People have already begun to request the bed.
The bed.
So I'm sure that will be a follow-up.
In 2024.
Why not?
2022.
Okay, Nick Silva. He says, easy question for you today. I'll be the judge of that, Nick. When working with rough lumber, how much extra waste do you expect to lose when jointing and ripping operations? Basically, if I'm working with a 3-inch final width and 3 1/4 inch final thickness, should I be purchasing lumber that's at least 4 inches and 4 1/4, or can I get away with less? I'm assuming that some of this is dependent on how rough the lumber is as well. What's the general rule of thumb? I don't really have a general rule of thumb. If it fits under the dimension of the wood when you buy it, by any amount, it really comes down to how stable that wood is and how flat it is to begin with. So let's say if I buy it rough and I'm cutting it really close, maybe there's only 1/8 of an inch to spare. When I buy that board, I'm going to make sure that that board is pretty much dead straight, so I can hold it up and sight down and kind of get an idea for how much waste I'm going to have to go through to get that board flat. So it's kind of this give and take thing. If I need, because it's, maybe it's the only board that they had in that species and it's wonky, well then I better buy a board that's a lot thicker to account for the fact that I'm going to be jointing and planing it down to size. Same thing goes with ripping. Ripping is a little less predictable because you don't know if that board is going to start to bow or do some weird things when you rip it at the table saw until you actually rip it. You can't look at it and tell that. So usually I allow myself about 1/4 inch of spare room Another factor is the grain. You know, if you want to get picky about grain direction or which part of the board you want to take, well, the more you have, the more options you have there. So I try to get my boards as wide as I can so that I can be more selective about what pieces go into my final project. But it's definitely a give and take and up and down. It's not a clear cut, here's the rule that you use. If we were just making everything out of plywood and MDF, then you could have those kinds of rules. But when you're talking about solid wood, you need to allow yourself a lot more flexibility there. So the more, the better. And the flatter, the better, because you just won't waste as much. And I think that's it for our Patreon questions.
Well, I have a few from the YouTube chat.
Okay.
Jeannie Grassi wants to know, with a complicated glue up like a chair,
Yeah.
how do you organize the steps?
Huh. Well, this is interesting. We're in the middle of a
Glue up,
complicated glue up this morning. In
Yeah.
fact, Jay came in early so that before the show, we were planning on gluing up the entire chest, the storage chest, this morning. Well, we didn't get to it because part of the strategy we developed as we're doing this is like, are there sub-assemblies that we can do, right? That's the first question you always want to ask yourself with something really complex. Are there parts and pieces that you could put together ahead of time, get those in place and secured and glued, and then let that dry, and then bring that sub-assembly into the rest of the parts?
Did you have a sub-assembly?
Well, we were trying to do it without sub-assemblies because we want to make sure this whole thing glues up nice and square. Sometimes you run the risk with sub-assemblies where you're applying pressure, and you might actually, in this case, we've got 4 legs and panels, you could apply pressure the wrong way and slightly skew those legs. You can't tell during the sub-assembly because it's not joined to anything else. When you go to bring those sides together with the front and back rails, now suddenly you realize, oh crap, we've got a little bit of a, we're not square
So
anymore.
how do you fix that?
Well, you avoid it.
Oh.
It's hard to fix.
Yeah.
You clamp the hell out of it and try and hope for the best.
Clamp and pray.
Yeah, exactly. So sub-assemblies are a real great start. I mean, depending on the chair design, you may or may not be able to do sub-assemblies, but that's a great way to do it. You want to do a dry run. You want to have all of your parts organized and ready to go. Have your clamps in place. There's nothing worse than when you're gluing it up and you go, crap, I got the wrong size clamp. So you want to make sure you have everything there at arm's distance so that you could just grab it and go. You want to use a long set glue because that really takes a lot of the pressure off if you...
What's a long set glue?
You want to use something like Type-On's hide glue. That's what we're using on this one. It gives us a lot of working time. So if I screw something up or need to move a part, or after I get everything together, then I have to square it up. You can do that because the parts are still slipping past one another. Epoxy, if you have a long open time or a long set epoxy, with a slow hardener, those are really good as well for long glue ups. So that's really it. It's a matter of organization, doing some dry runs, having your glue, your brushes, your clamps, everything right there, and just kind of, the dry run is everything. The dry run tells you exactly.
Ready.
Yeah, I mean, if you're assembling something and you don't know the order that the parts should go in, that's what the dry run is there for. It's to tell you these go in first and do it like this. All right. So there's a combination of things, but again, sub-assemblies are a lifesaver.
That was a good question.
Yes, it was. Oh, here's another thing. If you have loose mortise and tenon joints, that means a tenon is separate from both pieces. Each piece has a mortise, and you have the tenon stock. One thing you could do, I do this all the time, insert that tenon with glue into one of the pieces, right? As long as you can position it perfectly, glue that into one half of the joint. Now, that reduces your joints that require glue. It reduces it by 50%. You actually have half of them done by the time you do your final glue up. That's what we did this morning because we just couldn't get into the full glue up. We glued all the dominoes into the holes on the rails, and now they're there ready to go. So it makes it faster.
Gary Badger says, how do you
There's
handle...
a missile in my house, Gary!
Do you know that today is the anniversary of the release of Weird Science?
Is it?
It is.
I thought you said it was, you shouldn't say the name of the movie after you make a reference because it ruins it.
I'm just giving you another fact.
That's what you said. That is what you said. Okay.
But I'm saying it's kind of funny you choose that movie.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I subliminally was thinking.
That this day is wonderful.
Something I read online this morning.
So Gary wants to know, how do I
handle this missile in my house? What?
The circular saw marks. He's very intense about this. On the side of the board when it is visible in the project.
Well, I think he says sand or plane. Well, those are the two. If you have a good sharp smoothing plane, a lot of times those marks are very easily removed just by a couple of strokes with a smoothing plane. You're not removing much material, you're just flattening it out and getting rid of all that schmutz. You can definitely sand. Sanding takes longer, and you also want to be careful when you're sanding. Would not be using power sanders unless we're talking about a really thick workpiece. I would probably just use a sanding block of some type and almost treat it like a plane. You know, you're running it across that edge, holding it sometimes with two hands to make sure it stays flat on that edge. And this way you can kind of sand it and maintain the squareness of the edge. But yeah, that's really about it. You can also scrape if you want to. If you have a good sharp card scraper like this, you can use that to clean up the edge. But yeah, all those are valid ways to do it.
B. Walker, Mark, what's the deal with vices?
What's the deal with vices?
By the way, if you have Netflix, a new season of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, is that how it goes? Mm-hmm. Is out. It's very funny. We watched the Eddie Murphy episode last night. So he wants to know what the deal is with vices, getting ready to build a workbench, and I'm so overwhelmed when trying to choose what's the best vice or combo style to install. Any advice on your...
This is a tricky one, man. My advice would be to buy Chris Schwarz's workbench book, the first one, the blue cover. That is a book that, even if you don't use his plans to build one of his workbenches, it helps you understand what the point of a workbench is. And it sounds like you're belaboring the point a little bit, and it may be a lot of people this is obvious, but you need to understand what type of work holding that you need and want to do at the workbench. If you know how you need to hold the work, then you could start to address which vices will help you hold the work in those ways. So depending on whether you are all hand tools, maybe you're focused primarily on power tools, or you're kind of a hybrid woodworker like me, you might have different needs. So understanding how you need to grip the work pieces and then what kind of vices will allow that to happen, it really does help narrow down your choices. So a lot can be done with just the simple quick release vice, positioned properly on the workbench. But there are so many, you're right, there's a staggering amount of vices out there with different installation difficulties. But I think the best thing to do is look at the work you're going to do. And if there's only a couple different types of work holding that you need to accomplish, then you may only need one vice. You may not need to go all crazy and have multiple vices on your bench. But again, I do recommend that workbench book by Chris Schwarz because it's probably more than any other book out there simplifies this process of helping you go through what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and how vices and the workbench itself will help you accomplish those things. Well worth the investment, and it's a great read in general.
I actually have most of your books. I'm still going through the process of cataloging all the books you have on your bookshelf. But that's the one right there, right?
That is it, yep.
All right, so if you go to amazon.com/shop/thewoodwhisperer, there's Mark's bookshelf. I also have this in Mark's bookshelf in the Canadian store as well as the UK store.
Cool, man.
And Workbenches is there.
There it is.
So
Highly recommend it.
Plus you support the show. It's a win-win.
Yep. We get like 0.5% of the sale. Flipping awesome.
We have a question here from Sean Patterson. Is there a functional or quality difference between side-mounted and bottom-mounted drawer slides? Do you have a preference?
I've only worked with bottom mount drawer slides once. Excuse me, when I built my desk.
Oh.
So I don't know why. I guess people had requested it, and I was like, well, I haven't tried this before. Let me give those a shot. I think side mount is the easiest, I think, for most woodworkers just out of the gate to wrap their heads around. Bottom mount is there's a little more required of the installation. It's not as simple as allow a 1/2 inch on each side and build your box to fit in that space. You got to do a little bit more on the underside. The amount of room you have between your bottom and your drawer sides, that is critical. You got to have a notch in the back for the hardware to go through. So it's not an insurmountable task, but it is a little bit more work and a little bit more planning required for undermount.
Can I have your phone?
Oh yeah, if there's any life left.
Thanks.
Why?
Because I need to get the code.
Oh. So I'm not in terms of strength, I think most of the time they're rated very similarly in terms of strength and power. I mean, you can get really strong 100-pound, each side slides, and you can get, a similar range on undermount, but I'm not that familiar with the undermount slides as I am with the side mount slides. So I think it comes down to probably, in most cases, the design. Do you want to see the hardware? If you don't, and you don't like the look of metal hardware, then the undermount slides are a great way to go. Our entire kitchen is made with undermount slides everywhere. And it's like a nice finished look. You pull a drawer out, and all you see is the side of the drawer box. You don't see any hardware, and it's a nice finished look. But in my shop, do I care? Absolutely not. I don't care if I see drawer slides on the sides.
Who cares?
Oh, who cares?
Who cares?
Jay cares. Jay would like me to convert all of my drawers to bottom mount slides. Let's get on it. They're not cheap.
We got a question from Chuck Wynn. Favorite finish for cherry? Thanks. Love what you do.
Well, shoot, these days we've been using a lot of Rubio and Osmo. And I think at this point, this is a moving target. My favorite finish on any wood may change depending on the stage of life I'm in, the cost of the finishes, things like that. So right now, my favorite finishes are those hard wax oils, which is so funny because years ago, I was so down on those, just as a concept. And because I was really into
you changed your opinion?
Yeah, I think that in that video I did on I Changed My Mind, that was one of the things.
Yeah.
I used to just really want nice looking quality film finishes, and over the years I've just wanted to reduce the little nasty chemicals in my life, and I've started to embrace hard wax oils. So our last 6-7 projects that have left this shop have been with either Rubio or Osmo.
There you go.
Yeah.
We got a question from Clayton. Hey Mark, how do you manage your shop time versus family versus life? Seems this is my biggest issue, and I haven't been able to get into shop much for almost a year.
Well, first of all, let me say there's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel bad. I think the two most important things in your life are starting with number 1, family, number 2, your job, because that allows you to take care of your family, and then let's put woodworking as a third. So if those first 2 are too much and you don't have time to get in the shop, then that's the stage of life you're in, and that's just what you have to do. So don't feel bad about it. You're doing the right thing. For me, because this is a family business, we have 3 of our employees for this business right here. My mom is the other one. Family is well integrated into the business. So there are some things, that we'll talk about in the house when I'm not working that it's kind of like getting work done. We discuss, do we want to have a sale on this? What's the price on this? Should we contact this person to be in the guild? What's the next project? So a lot of that is integrated, but we also kind of have a hard and fast, with the exception of crunch times, hard and fast shop time rules. So Jay and I work a pretty regular schedule from the morning till the afternoon once the kids get home. Generally speaking, I'm in the house, Jay goes home and he's with his kids. So we do have work hours, and I think that's, for a business, really important because it can absolutely consume all of your time inside the house when you're supposed to be having family time. So I think drawing those lines is very important. Now, if you're talking from a hobbyist perspective, you're really just left with either saying, hey, Saturday mornings, Dad is going to make breakfast for everyone, and then he's going out into the shop, and I won't see you for 3 hours, but I'll be back for lunch. Like, it just may be one of those things. As long as your family supports what you do, it shouldn't be too difficult to make a little bit of private time.
Get out of here.
Also think about reciprocating. So I'm not sure of your family situation. I assume you're married, and your wife, maybe she has other things she'd like to do. So the payback for that is to make sure if you get your shop time, that she's allowed to do her thing, and this way it's you scratch her back, she scratches yours, and it's fair.
I'm gonna go play Fallout New Vegas for 5 hours.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the kids to the park or to the play place or whatever, urban air, for a few hours and get them out of your hair. So it's one of those things. I think the key is you and your wife have to both be on board with how to fit this schedule in so that you can actually get some shop time.
Communication is key.
Sure.
Communication breaks down. Everything breaks down.
Everything breaks down.
All right. We have a question from, I skipped a few. Chad. He has a marketing question. I might be able to help you.
We love marketing.
When you got started building for clients, how did you go about marketing yourself? Thanks for your insight. Well,
We put a card in
we
Schlotsky's
went
Deli.
to Schlotsky's Deli and put a business card. Honestly, you look for all opportunities. I remember a Phoenix magazine contacted you and wanted to put you in their story. I'm like, okay. So, I mean, of course, number one is having a website, showing your work. Try to get your past clients to write Google reviews for you. If you have an actual business that's in Google, people really look at those reviews. I think more so than Yelp now. I mean,
Yelp is kind of hard to even take seriously at this point.
Yelp's a mess. The other place that you could potentially market yourself is a website called Thumbtack. This is a free service for customers. So, but you as a business may pay, I think it's $40 for the bid. I've found some amazing people through that service. I love that service.
Another thing is networking. Don't underestimate the power of meeting other people. These people aren't your competition. These people are potentially folks who can throw work your way. I had friends in Phoenix who, one of them owned a refinishing shop, the other had his own business, another one had a CNC business. So a lot of times those people would get calls for jobs that they can't take, and they know that I would actually do a pretty good job with whatever that client wanted, so they would pass them on to me. And as long as you're friendly and you guys have a good relationship, that is something that really is helpful, because you can have business thrown your way, and I would reciprocate that and say, hey, I can't do this job, but my buddy Ron has a CNC. He'll be able to knock this thing out for you, and I would send him business, and it works both ways. You also have people who you can collaborate with on jobs that are bigger than you would want to take on your own. So that's something that you could do as well.
Yeah. Also connect with, if you have a local woodworking association. So a lot of times, I mean, I still get emails saying, I want you to build this for me. I'm like, I'm sorry, we don't do commissions anymore.
Yeah.
And I, depending on where they're located, I'll say, hey, check with the local woodworkers association. They have a huge roster of makers and woodworkers that they can put you in contact with. So it's just like Mark said, it's a battle. It's a battle. It is a battle.
It is a battle.
It's a matter of networking and just trying to push yourself out there as much as possible, even guerrilla marketing, stuff like that. I mean, this guy.
Yeah, speaking of gorillas. Is that what you meant?
I'm just saying, there's ways to kind of push yourself out there.
Oh, this you're talking about?
Yeah,
I thought you were
Foxhole.
pointing at me.
No.
Saying I'm a gorilla. I mean, I'm hairy and all, Nicole, but come on. I don't really have the build for it.
Bill just said, Mark said the blue cover revised edition of the Schwartz Workbench book. Your link is the older version. That's not the older version, that's the new version.
I have no idea. Just look at see if there's an updated version.
Why
do they even have an old version?
It just says revised edition. I have the blue version.
Well, I know there's a red version, but it was an update and not like a new book.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
In all of my stores, I have the blue version.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the red version is like a reprint, but
it says revised edition.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Figure it out. You'll figure it out.
I'll put the link in the chat.
Guess
How
what?
about that?
I have the very first print, and it still is how I formulated my opinion.
Yes.
So I'm sure, regardless, even if you got the old version, you're going to get the point. Yeah. But we'll see if we can fix that link.
All right. Were you saying something else? I don't
remember. Brian says, make sure you give your business card to everyone you walk past and tell them what you do. You know, because that's not annoying in the mall, right?
Yeah.
You're like, hi, I'm a woodworker. Here you go.
I think Brian was joking.
No. Hi, I know this is what Brian does. Yeah. First time he came to the house, he's like, hey, I'm Brian.
Hey, I'm Brian.
I do some woodworking. Okay, what else we got?
There we go.
Any more questions?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I have plenty.
This one, I'm not going to give you a good answer to this, but I think it's a valid question. Does sustainability, deforestation, or CITES status factor into your species choice, like African teak, Honduran rosewood? Well, John, I don't really use too much of that stuff these days, so it's something where if you primarily stick with your domestic species, your common domestics, and then if you go into exotics, you stay with things like African mahogany or just some of the basics. You don't go too deep into like some of the guitar specialty woods. If you stay out of that stuff in general, you buy from a reputable dealer, you don't usually have to worry about that sort of issue, because a lot of times these dealers, they're all abiding by these regulations that are put in place. And when something is endangered and there's a problem, you'll find that they stop selling it, or maybe they are restricted and they can't sell it. So for me, I don't really have to think about it very often, just because I'm not typically using woods that even find themselves on those lists. But it is something I think, to each individual, however much you want to be involved in that thought process, talk to the dealer, find out where they're getting this stuff. In some cases, it's not exactly what you think it is. For instance, you can get certain types of Honduran mahogany from plantations, right? Even though it's the same species, this one was grown in Fiji, and it actually is a sustainable version of that wood. So you ask the questions, and I think it's a responsible thing to do, especially if you're going to be using some of those woods that may end up on the CITES list.
Let's see. Kevin Hahn. Mark, when you are going to do a plywood project, yay, how do you decide between MDF core and combination core, assuming the same species and face veneer type/grain?
I will always go for combination core over MDF core. MDF generally doesn't have a lot of structure to it. It's not like it's a bad material to use. You could certainly use it, but if I'm going to be using a sheet good, I want something with a little bit more structural integrity, something that's likely to take a screw a little bit better, and the combination core is the best of both worlds. You got an inner plywood core. Let's say maybe the first ½ inch center is plywood, the outer skins are MDF, giving you a nice perfect underlayment for the veneer to go on top of. So now you have a void-free, consistent surface. It truly is the best of both worlds, and if combo core, classic core is available, I'm always going to get that over MDF. And MDF core is what I would call my last resort. If I'm doing 1/4 inch back panels, then I don't even think about it. It's usually, if what they have is MDF and it's got the face I want, then I get that. But that's because it's a back panel or a drawer bottom. If we're talking about more structural components, classic core, combo core, all the way.
Combo Panda.
Yes, combo Panda.
Danny Coy just sent in a super chat and said, can you make Thor's hammer out of wood? What wood would you use?
Can I, or is it a general like...
It just says, can you?
I cannot, because I don't want to.
Yeah.
But someone certainly could make Thor's hammer.
In fact, you have one around here.
I've got, well, it's not Thor's hammer.
Oh.
It's
no, we don't. Well, isn't
James King's hammers.
And Scott Hampshire.
Well, that's a band hammer.
Right.
We're talking about a specific hammer, Nicole.
I know.
Not all hammers are created equal. You absolutely could. And what you make it out of, I guess, depends on what you're doing with it. Are you actually using it?
Are you going to cosplay with it? Because you probably don't want to
So
lug
that's the
around.
thing. If you're making a prop for cosplay or something like that, then you want to make it out of something really light.
Foam.
Well, foam is certainly an option, but we're talking about wood.
No, well, yeah.
So you would want to use, something that isn't too heavy. I would probably go for something like alder because it's inexpensive, it's very light. I can get thick boards and it should hold up under its own weight. If you're actually going for something with function, well, now you got to look into a handle that can take the abuse because the head is pretty heavy. So, look at what other handles are typically made out of, things like hickory. The head depends on what you're doing with the hammer. If it's something you want to be really dense and heavy, you got like this one that James made. It's a Purple Heart handle and a lignum vitae head. That's one of the hardest woods on the planet. So this thing is going to be, very denty and damaging. So you have to think about the function, really, is what it comes down to.
If you are interested in any kind of prop making, head on over to our friend Bill's website, which is Punished Props, I believe punishedprops.com. Mm-hmm. Punished Props. Yep, I was right. And he has amazing tutorials, books, all of that. He does some really cool stuff. A lot of video game stuff, but he also, his buddy made, what was not Thor's hammer, what was the hammer they made after the hammer was broken?
Oh, I don't know.
It was like the axe almost, like the two-sided axe.
You're talking about from the movies?
The Stormbreaker.
So then you just answered your question. Apparently it's the Stormbreaker.
It's the Stormbreaker. So anyway. Stuff like that. It's cool. It's really cool. All right, we got another question from Brian Thorpe. Maple plywood stained with 6-inch strips because of book match veneer. Solution for future staining?
Where's?
I don't know. This is a half sentence.
Where is it?
It's right here.
Maple plywood stained with 6-inch stripes
Oh, strips.
because of book-matched veneer. Solutions for future staining? I don't understand the question.
I don't understand the question.
Brian, I'm sorry. I don't understand your question.
Antonio says, new guild member here.
Oh, hey, Antonio.
Yay.
No, that's Anthony.
Oh, sorry. Anthony. I saw Sergio and I immediately just
You combined his first and last names?
turned you into an...
Okay, that's fine.
The quality of the hang chair videos exceeded my high expectations. I have little to no experience with a bandsaw and will be purchasing a 14-inch Laguna or Rikon for the build. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's just a statement.
I
not a question.
thought there was a question.
It's all good, though.
But hey,
Well, that's
welcome.
good. Enjoy the bandsaw,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you like the hang chair build. It's one of my favorites.
It's beautiful.
I still have my hang chairs partially assembled over there.
Are you going to finish them?
Well, I'm not going to waste them.
Okay.
I mean, I'm like 80% done.
Oh.
It's just we got to find some spare time.
You know, I was thinking...
Oh boy. This is always how bad conversations start. You know, I was thinking.
When it comes from me, it's when
You need to
magic
shower more
happens. No.
Yeah.
Since the hang chair has upholstery, and I really want you to redo our dining chair, can I send the chairs off to a professional upholsterer?
Yeah.
Okay. I really just want more
Yeah, I got it.
on
Why
the
don't we
chair.
talk about this privately? It's a private matter, Nicole.
No, I wanted to send off the stuff.
Yeah, well, basically, I think I'm going to have to make. So we're talking about the dining chairs that I did in the guild, and as a late game kind of change, I went with an inset upholstered seat. And over time, Nicole's just told me a few times that she would prefer a overlay seat that actually gives a wider platform. So what we have to do then is take those inside ones out.
Yeah.
I've got to make
Well, no, you don't
basically
have to do
blanks.
it. If I find an upholsterer, they'll do
I'm
it.
not sure. It depends on the upholsterer. I may have to make the seat out of plywood, right? Make the seat base,
Yeah.
and then say, "Here, we just need these padded and upholstered," and they
Gotcha.
would, and then I would take them home and attach them. So, it's going to be a little bit of work, but
Ava's also colored on almost all of the chairs.
all the chair seats, yeah. So
So.
maybe we'll go with pleather,
Yeah.
so we can clean it.
Felix says, hello from Hammond, Indiana. What is the best mixture of paint to put into a sprayer? Do you always need to thin out the paint?
Not necessarily. I mean, it depends on your sprayer. Are you doing? Did you say HVLP or
You
anything?
didn't. You just said sprayer.
There's HVLP, and then there's airless sprayers. Airless sprayers are really meant for spraying thick-bodied finishes, which includes paint. So sometimes you don't need to thin them at all. If you have a strong enough compressor, 4 or 5 stage, you might not have to thin either. And not all paint brands and formulations are the same. So some of them, again, will be thin enough that you don't have to thin. What I would do is thin only if you absolutely need to. So you could put some of the paint into the cup, try it, see how it works, and if you need to add some water, you can do so. Typically, you're going to find most recommendations are to not thin past 10%. If you have to thin that far, something's wrong. You might need a different sprayer or more powerful sprayer or something like that. But you can thin a little bit. There's also products that help the finish flow out a little bit better. They don't necessarily thin the finish that much, but it can help it flow on the surface. So if it's a little orange peely, it might allow it to kind of flow out into a nice, even, smooth layer. Things like Flow-Troll is something you might look into.
What's Flow-Troll?
Just a bottle of schmutz you buy at Home Depot, and it's an additive.
Flow-Troll.
Yeah. It's an additive. We used to use it in Phoenix a lot. I'm pretty sure we almost used it as a retarder. But what was that? But again, I'm a little out of my league when it comes to things like latex finishes. So I'm just kind of throwing spaghetti on the wall and hoping you can find something that works.
I don't see flow. Is that it? Flow?
No.
No.
It's more like this.
Is it like that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Flood?
Oh no, that's it.
Flow-Troll additive.
Yeah, Floetrol.
Yeah.
So it's a type.
Flow-Troll.
Troll. Okay, I'll put that in the Friday.
Sure.
There you go. In the Amazon store. Yeah.
Yeah.
Close that door.
No, it's fine. I like the fresh air.
I like the fresh air too.
All right. Question. What else?
Oh, Anthony said it's okay. He is Italian, and he did have a question, and I missed it. So
Oops.
I have it right here. He said, any suggestions for smaller projects before cutting into the thick, pricey walnut? Does any particular bandsaw cut on the projects strike you as more difficult than others?
Okay, so smaller
Because
projects.
he's doing the hang chair.
Yeah. Does any particular bandsaw cut on the project strike you as more? Well, the only problems that I had with the bandsaw cuts were when you're dealing with big pieces and you've already got like the sub-assembly of the sides together, and then you need to trim to your line before you do the flush trimming operation. Trying to manage that big piece, it's a bit of a brain teaser at some point, because you're trying to get this big thing around the post of the bandsaw to contact the blade. It's really awkward to cut that out. So that's going to be pretty much the only big challenge. I mean, you might also have a little bit of a challenge when you're cutting the backrest curves. The backrest, I don't know, is like 7 inches wide. That's a pretty big resaw. So if the saw's not tuned well and maybe the blade is skewed at an angle, that'll screw you up big time. So you want to make sure that the blade is nice and square to the table and cutting cleanly, and then you can cut the back curve and then the front curve on the headrest. But that's really about it. I mean, as far as small projects to use before you cut into the pricey walnut, if you're looking to get the same operations done, it's going to be hard for me to recommend something. But if you're looking for something basic just to get your hands dirty, cutting boards are great, right? It's a great first project.
People like cutting boards.
People like them. If you do some cool designs, you've got to make sure that your tools are all cutting square and that you're calibrated well to be able to pull all those joints off, especially for like end grain boards, where if things aren't calibrated correctly, your error is multiplied by the pattern you create, and you'll find your errors very quickly with something like that.
So I have a question here from Danny Coy, and I wanted to clarify that he's serious, and we have to remember there's a whole new generation of woodworkers that are coming into YouTube.
I don't believe it, Nicole.
That don't know of the great woodworkers. And so he asked me, who is Sam Maloof?
Do you mean like the Matt Cremonas?
No, not the Matt Cremonas, not the Mark Spagnolas. We're talking Krenoff, we're talking Maloof, we're talking these, when you were learning, you were taught about these woodworkers through David Marks.
Sure.
So I feel like it's important that we continue to talk about some of the great woodworkers that have been.
Well, and a lot of times this stuff just kind of happens the more you're in this environment and you're talking to, let's call it, I would say if you get out of the maker community, and I don't mean this to sound in any way derogatory or bad. The maker community in general is pretty much focused on 2008 forward, because the term wasn't even around prior to that in the way that it's used today.
Yeah, before it was like robotics and I guess...
like Maker Faire, right?
Maker Faire,
so it was more focused on machinery. I mean, and it still is to an extent, but now maker has become this very generic term that's practically meaningless because it's too inclusive of everything. So when we're talking about current people coming into the fold, if that's all you're doing is playing on Instagram and on various social channels and YouTube, chances are you're not going to run into a lot of history in this stuff. It's when you dig deeper down into the niche and you start to get more into the quote-unquote fine woodworking sector, that's when you're going to start to confront things like the history of who came before us. That when you see Mark Spagnolo make this Asian-inspired, weird-looking, I had some guy on Instagram say it looked kind of, for better or for worse, it has a cartoony look to it. And it's like...
Wasn't that the SketchUp?
No.
Oh, no.
It was actually the final piece. And it's like, well, that may be, but this is an impression of a person who's never seen Greene and Greene before. To him, it looked cartoony, and that's a perfectly valid point. And if you've never seen it before, that may be the impression you get, but this person doesn't know the history and where that came from. So I do think once you dig a little deeper into the niche of woodworking, that's when you're going to start to hear these names like Maloof, you're going to hear Krenoff, Nakashima, Wendell Castle. There are some amazing woodworkers in here. I'm not even the best when it comes to the history of this stuff. My history is only at a very surface level. But those people are there, they're worth researching, and when you see this cool little video come up on YouTube showing a design you'd never seen before, there's a real good chance that there's a woodworker 2 or 3 generations prior to that person that may have inspired that piece, whether they know it or not. Things have gotten so diluted now to the point where someone may follow me on Instagram, see this project and go, man, that looks like Mark's style, right? Or they might go, oh, that looks like Daryl Peart's style, right? Daryl Peart deals exclusively in Greene and Greene influenced furniture. And if you are on Instagram, you may think Daryl invented Greene and Greene furniture. So it's one of those things where we are running...
The Hall and the Greene brothers, right?
Yes, the Hall brothers and the Greene brothers. The Halls made it and the Greenes designed it. So I do think we run a little bit of a risk losing the paper trail on this stuff, and I do think it's important to talk about these people. So anyway, to answer Danny's question, Sam Maloof is a pretty important woodworker, and when you look at his work and you look at Sam's chairs, you're going to see a lot of influence of other people maybe that you follow online. Sam was the one who really popularized the ergonomic, organic, flowing structure that became an iconic rocking chair, the sculpted rocking chair that has been copied and reproduced many times over and also played on as a theme into other types of furniture.
He has work that's in the Smithsonian. Did you know that? I didn't know that. He's in a lot of museums.
There's the Maloof Foundation is a good organization, and also the Maloof shop is still functioning, and they're in Southern California. I don't know exactly where in California right now. Chino?
Chino.
No, that's where he was born.
Oh, that's where he was born.
Where are they?
It says
Alta Loma. I don't know. Somewhere in California, and you can take tours and stuff there.
No, never mind.
Which is really good. They encourage people to come through and see the shop, and they're still putting out furniture in the Maloof style.
Yeah. There's a whole Wikipedia. Did you know that on the woodworking page there's a list of notable woodworkers? You're not on it. You're not notable.
I am not notable. Well, that's because I don't have a Wikipedia page.
I think I tried to get you a Wikipedia page, but Wikipedia is very intimidating to me, and I feel like they're going to yell at me for doing it wrong because I'm going to do the page wrong.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
It's like getting the verified star, right?
Yeah. But
Tay Frid is on there.
Tay Frid.
Norm Abram. David Marks is there.
Oh, is he? Oh,
yep.
Good. Well, good.
Let's see.
Paul Sellers is
Paul
on
Sellers,
there.
Roy Underhill. Chris Schwarz isn't on there.
I know Chris.
You would think Chris would be on there. He's published a gazillion books.
Yeah.
Well, again, Wikipedia is not everything.
Yeah. But it's a good place to start if
Yeah.
you're wanting to kind of educate yourself on the woodworkers. And like you said, I think it's once you kind of see the style and you're like, oh, that's who originated that. So there you go.
Dig into it. It's worth it. And I mean,
Is there a
it's one of those things
that
that
goes through them all? Not really.
Not all of them. I mean, you'll find biographies and things like that.
Yeah.
Sam Maloof, Woodworker, is a really good book that I have if you want to learn about him specifically. It is funny though, because things like this have a way of becoming like a thing. For instance, if you only live in Instagram world, Matt Cremona invented crotchwood. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
He also invented the slab, right? If you only follow YouTube, Paul Sellers invented hand tools, right? Yeah. I mean, this is how this happens.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, to give credit where it's due, I invented cutting boards, so there's that. I'm just trying to make sure people understand that woodworking didn't start in 2006.
Yeah. I do know that you have that Sam Maloof, the woodworker. I don't have it in the store.
Yeah, it's on my shelf in the shop.
I'll put that there.
All right, what else we got?
Got a question
Time
here.
to wrap it up.
From James Hickey. Is there a question? Oh, hey!
What?
There's a question. What is the difference between airless and HVLP?
Airless sprayers, think of them more like a pump, right? It's just pumping fluid, and it's going through a little tiny hole at the tip, and it just sprays a thick-bodied fluid onto the surface. HVLP is something that works with the inclusion of air. That's why the other one is called airless. The HVLP is actually pushing air with the liquid, combining it in a way that atomizes the liquid into very, very small particles, and you get that very fine spray on the surface. So in order to get that to actually look good, you have to go slow enough and have the fluid high enough that it is hitting the surface, and then all those little droplets come back together to create a layer on the surface. So that's why a thick-bodied finish like paint, you try to push that through an HVLP, you're not just throwing paint on the wall, you're atomizing it. And thick-bodied finishes with those big pigments in there and a very high viscosity liquid like that, those things have a real hard time atomizing the paint and turning it into those little teeny tiny droplets. So that's why typically thick-bodied finishes, you're going to find airless sprayers. People who paint houses they're using airless sprayers. It's essentially a pump that's shooting everything out this little small orifice. Take it easy, Nicole.
There you go. We got a question here from Nick Silva. Mark, my wife is interested in wood turning. Do you have a recommended set of starter tools?
I don't.
Turning tools. Doesn't Ashley though?
Well, yes. Ashley's recommended tools are if you are really getting serious about this. They're not cheap, but they are some of the best out there. And you want to get into like the push cut method that she teaches, that's a great place to start. Those are kind of like your forever tools if you're going to get into that. If she's just getting started out, they may not be what you want to do. She also may not be interested in really getting into the push cut method. For instance, if you came out here and turned, I probably wouldn't give you, all of the fancy stuff.
You just give
I
me
would say, here's the easy wood tools.
Easy wood tools.
And easy wood tools, the carbide scrapers, and there's other companies that make those are definitely more beginner friendly. You will have an easier time getting her to go from like 0 to finished product in a day with those scraper tools. So I think that might be something to look into.
And what does she want to turn? Does she want to turn bowls? Does she want to turn pens? I mean, your pen turning, you can have smaller, right?
Yeah, you might want smaller tools, but you can still turn pens with full-size lathe tools.
True.
I think it's really just a question of, does she want to go through the learning curve of proper turning tools, or is she interested in the art of turning and making things, but is willing to use the carbide scraper tools, which are a little bit of a shortcut in the learning curve? If you ask someone like Ashley, you have to use the really good tools because those are the kind of tools that give you a perfect cut right off the lathe with minimal sanding, because the shear action and the cuts that you make on that are so good. With your scraper tools, you might have a little bit more finish processing to do and sanding and stuff like that.
I've just looked at Amazon. Easy Wood Tool has a starter set.
Okay.
That it has the parting tool.
They'll give you it's like usually a 3-piece set.
Yeah.
Easy Wood Tools, but I think Woodpeckers has them. Rockler has them now. Almost every company that sells tools has a line of carbide scraper tools, and they're very popular for a reason. They're just they really shorten the learning curve for turning.
There you go. And then I think I have another question from Ken Smith. Is there an online company you would recommend to order cabinet grade plywood at a decent price? All I have near me is Home Depot and Lowe's, so it's expensive.
Nope. That's a great question for the chat room, though. I have never ordered plywood online.
What? I thought you had the cabinets in Arizona, Cabinet Notch or whatever.
It's not a plywood company.
Oh, it's not.
That's a ready-to-assemble cabinet company.
Oh,
okay. The other thing you could also look at, it depends on where you are. I mean, some places, these dealers, the local dealers, might not be the easiest things to find. So you might even ask around at cabinet shops where they source their material. There might be a local vendor that you're just not aware of, and you might be able to source it from there. But outside of that, hopefully someone in the chat room can give them a recommendation. If you know of an online dealer that's reputable and not too crazy with the shipping, that can get this guy some plywood.
Bill said, oh crud, it just occurred to me that the bread box is going to appeal to the same non-paying relatives that the cutting boards do.
I'd really like one of those bread boxes.
I love that bread box. Can you make me one?
Yeah, that's great.
We're going to see so many bread boxes now. It's I can't wait. Oh, wow. Let's see. Bensley says, have you ever thought about opening the show with a 30-second profile of one of the old woodmasters?
Have I ever thought about that?
Come children, let's learn about Krenov today.
We'll put up a big sign, just a big poster of him in the background.
We'll put a frame, and every week we'll change the picture.
I mean, we could, but again, I'm not that well versed in it. If you don't know any of the history, you may think that I'm, very aware of the history, but I don't go back that far. Just because of the same reasons people aren't today. If you don't need to, or you're not trying to become an academic of woodworking, you might not feel the need to dig deep into the history.
Yeah.
So mine only goes back so far. I mean, I might be able to profile 6 people or something like that, and then I would start to need, which may not be that bad of an idea, to research some of these people who I'm not aware of, and then it becomes a learning experience for me as well.
You might get influenced with your woodworking. And that's honestly, I remember talking to David Marks about that and how he would work in other woodworkers' shop. I mean, in California, there's a lot of woodworkers.
Oh, yeah.
And they just kind of influence you. I mean, you saw it with working with Joinery.
Right.
So I think it would be kind of neat if you did like a show like the comedians in cars getting coffee, where it's woodworkers in the shop.
Woodworkers in the shop, farting around.
Yeah.
That'd be the name of our show.
But I love those raw conversations that Jerry
Yeah.
Seinfeld has with other comedians. And I feel like,
All right, well, spoiler alert, it's not going to be that funny.
I know it won't be funny, but I think it would
A little bit
I think
funny.
it would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, let's not do that. Yeah, so I think
You
that's a
remember
cool
that
idea.
One time?
That's a really neat idea, though. I like where that's going.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
What else we got?
Did I miss any super chats? I feel like I missed a super chat. I did miss a super chat.
Oh, boy.
Corey said, I always have every size of screw except the size I need. How do you inventory and organize your fasteners? Do you keep them stocked? Do you just buy for each project? Thanks, you're both amazing. Oh, Corey, thank you. You're amazing.
I actually have a stock of all the ranges of sizes that I need.
You make Jason sort them.
Yes. Well, when the little silver ones get combined and they differ by about 1/16 of an inch in length, you got to have someone separate those. I have little red bins, and I keep them all in a drawer, and each bin has a little, even went through my little label maker, my Label Baby Junior, and I put the sizes on there, and I do keep an inventory. Now, there's screws that I use most often, like 1.25 inches is a real common screw size for me. So I keep those, I have plenty of those, boxes of those. But that's what it comes down to. I just keep them in these bins, and inventory is very easy. I open the drawer and I look, and I go, well, those are kind of low. And then I go online and I buy some more screws. But it's a matter of keeping them in bins.
What's the website? It was like
right up there, CSH, Custom Service Hardware. I used to buy from McFeely's.
CS Hardware.
But I used to buy from McFeely's, and I found the prices were better at Custom Service Hardware.
There you go.
And there might be other vendors of screws that are even more reasonably priced, but that's the one.
But
that
usually
I go
when
to.
someone in the Facebook group goes, what company do you use to buy your screws?
Yep.
That's the one. I'll put the link in the show notes. CS Hardware. Alrighty, did I miss anything? I don't.
John says, you're a regifter. Seinfeld reference.
Yes. The label maker.
Label Baby Junior.
Label Baby Junior. I missed another one. Crowth Furniture. Any problems with lateral adjuster on the Lie Nielsen
Low angle jack?
low angle jack?
No.
I'm guessing he might have some
I
problems.
mean, look, if you're having any kind of functional problem with a Lie Nielsen tool, get in touch with them.
Yeah.
The low angle jack is a pretty simple tool. So you've got this little cap that holds the blade, and then you've got this guy that pushes the blade forward and back. You manually adjust the side-to-side position of the blade just by leaning into it and rotating it a little bit. That's the joy of a low angle jack, and these low angle planes, generally speaking, they're easier to adjust. So if you've got something going on there where something's not moving the way that it should, or it's sticking, or you're just not able to get the blade to do what it's supposed to do, something's probably wrong, give them a call.
Let's see here. I missed a few super chats. I don't know why YouTube doesn't let me know all of them. Vincent Sanders did a super chat.
And hold on a second, sorry. And this is what I thought, and again, terminology sometimes isn't my strong suit. The lateral adjuster, if I'm not mistaken, this is a number 7 classic. I believe it's this little guy on the back. That's the lateral adjuster on a hand plane. So on the low angle, this is something that's removed. That's one of the reasons why it's a simpler mechanism. You're doing that lateral adjustment side to side with your hands as opposed to using the tool. So either that was a trick question or you're looking for something that's not there. But maybe what he's saying is he's having problems making the lateral adjustment, which is what you're doing manually. There shouldn't be much range with the lateral adjustment on that because it's basically mounted fairly straight and you just have to kind of tweak it a little bit to make sure that the blade is evenly protruding from the sole of the plane.
Protruding.
So thanks, Jonathan.
So as I was
I
saying,
almost wore his shirt today.
Oh yeah.
Jonathan Katz Moses.
I got everything organized in his closet. So he has a stack of shirts to wear on Friday Life.
David Hunter says his super chat got missed.
I'm trying to get to it, and you keep interrupting me.
Well, look, I'm doing a show here, Nicole, and I've got to talk.
Vincent Sanders did a super chat, the very first super chat, and I missed it. And he just said, for your coffee this morning, enjoy. So Vincent,
thank you.
We already did Brian L's. David Hunter, that's the one I missed. Hi folks, a follow-up to my question last week on building my shop from zero. Thoughts on electrical outlets in the concrete flooring? Thanks.
Electrical outlets in the floor
It's helpful because you
can be very helpful.
Yeah.
I had those in Arizona. They were great. The thing is, you just got to be very, very sure about where you're putting them. Think about the tools that are in the middle of the shop, and if you are pretty set on where you want those to go, a floor outlet is a thing of beauty. It can be fantastic. Also think about dust. You don't want dust to get down into the receptacle, so got to keep those safety concerns. You don't want it around anywhere you might potentially have a spill, or if there's a water issue in the shop, you want to make sure that it's nowhere near that. But aside from those things, as long as you are absolutely confident with where those tools are going to be placed, you should definitely think about putting some in the floor. I did 2 places where I had my table saw and jointer, and then I had another location where I had my drum sander and planer clustered together. Those 2 places, I had a couple of outlets in the floor, and it was fantastic. Nothing going up to the ceiling for ceiling outlets, nothing going to the wall. It was just all contained, nothing to trip over. It was great.
Philip wants to know, what was your very first project you built? Very first. I'm curious what you're going to say.
Well, it depends on where you call first. I mean, I made reptile enclosures.
That's true.
And speaker boxes in high school. Those were really my first true take material and build something out of it.
Useful.
Yeah, build a functional item. But I was well before I was interested in woodworking. The things that I built once I started to kind of get tools and kind of get interested in woodworking, I built a medicine chest for a house in Temecula. No. So you took the old medicine chest out.
It was where the medicine chest,
we took the medicine chest out
and
we put in a recessed shelving unit that I made from like plywood and trim that I just bought from Home Depot.
I love that thing.
And that was kind of the first thing that got me, ushered me into making something that was like furniture-like. From that point, the very first real piece of furniture was a nightstand.
Was it? I thought it was the bookcase.
No.
For your mom.
No, I think the bookcase.
That she threw away.
Oh, you might be right. I don't know what came first.
Bookcase. It was like very wobbly and.
Yeah, it was a plywood bookcase. It was really bad. So I mean, it's bad when my mom throws it out, right? Like my mom keeps my old teeth, like locks of hair, not even baby hair, like from last year, like
going into the bathroom. And
sometimes, I mean, she does this with Mateo too. She'll be like, "Oh, Mr. Sandman was here," and she puts it in her little pocket of eye boogers, right? So the fact that she threw this thing away was definitely showing you how bad it was.
I think that was your first, though.
Okay, so if that was my first, then I think the nightstand, which Matt and Lori took.
Right, but that was like third. You made 2 bookcases.
Yeah, because I got a biscuit joiner at that point, right? And I was using a biscuit joiner.
I bought you a biscuit joiner because David Marks had a biscuit joiner.
Right. And then the second bookcase was actually much, much better.
Yes.
It was actually my second project, was a paying project. It was a friend of my mom's who wanted a bookcase, somehow saw hers and was like, I want one of those. So I'm not sure what she saw that made her think that I would be good at doing this. But I actually did more of like an arts and crafts sort of thing.
Yeah, there was like a design on it or something.
Yeah, the top rail.
It was like the boo-boo.
Yeah, the boo-boo-boo. The top rail had a little bit of like a step-down design. And she was thrilled. And the second one was actually a usable, decent bookcase.
Yeah, it was. Good job.
Thank you. I feel good about myself now. Let's see. What else?
We should probably, I think Super Chat just came in. We are past our time. I let us go a little longer.
Okay.
Jonathan Getz Moses. Give Nicole a compliment for organizing your closet.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I think next time we'll get your shirt on. That was next in line in my pile. That's the thing. I get these great shirts and I do wear them, but typically I'll just wear them like any other shirt.
I wash them and then they just kind of go into.
My shirt collection is insane, and we pare it down every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've.
I'm making quilts from your shirts now. That's how many shirts you have.
I love it. It's great. What else we got? Anything else?
Anything catch your eye?
Yeah, here's one from Gerardo.
Your mom is defending herself.
Oh, my mom says, I was, all caps, forced to throw it away. Did I guess I probably encouraged her.
You probably did. You're like, that is just not good. Let me build you another.
She came outside and it was on fire in her backyard. I was like, oops, what happened? Gerardo says, hi guys, I'm painting a baby crib in white. What kind of finish would you use over water-based paint? I think the only finish I would use over water-based paint is a water-based top coat. So something like General Finishes, High Performance is a really good top coat for paint. You want something water-based because if you, especially with white, if you coat that with a lacquer or an oil-based finish, bad things happen. That white suddenly becomes yellow. You don't want that at all. So water-based finishes are generally water white and will not take away that beautiful white crisp color. General Finishes High Performance, even if you just want to get like a polyacrylic, Minwax polyacrylic would work okay, but definitely stick with your water-based and acrylic style water-based top coats.
Making a Maker said that he ordered a couple books after last week's live show. Thank you for the work you put into them. I can't wait to dig in. Yeah, we still have some of the hardbound books. Somebody even wrote me and said, I couldn't find the flaw. Like, my book is perfect.
Some of them, that's the luck of the draw.
That's the luck of the draw.
So yeah, so don't forget, at the Guild site, can you put the link up real quick?
I just did.
Okay. So we have the flawed books still ready to go. We do have a limited supply though. They are the hardcover editions with a minor flaw, but you could still get those. They're priced at $20.
$20.
Which is really good considering it's a hardback edition. And then the other thing is today, once again, is the last day for the Breakbox pre-order. So if you want to get the lowest price on this thing, go see that project, go put 2 other projects into your order, bundle those suckers together, and you will get 40% off your entire order. You can buy the single project alone, but I believe it's a 10% discount alone, and it just stacks up to 40% as you keep adding projects.
And if you apply to the Guild scholarships, I am slowly sending those winners emails. So hang tight. I promise I'm going to send out a mass email to everyone that applied.
Hang in there, baby.
In fact, you should have already received an email from me saying thank you for applying. I sent that out yesterday. If you did not get it, check your spam folder. But yeah, I've already awarded 2, and I'm slowly letting people know.
My mom says, she's clarifying, she says, you refused to...
You invoked your mother into the show.
She wasn't on the show, but she heard me say your name. Yes? You refused to make me anything else until I got rid of the bookcase. By the way, I actually sold it at a yard sale. Well, look, perhaps my memory of this is a little bit clouded.
Yeah, I don't know.
I remember my mom throwing it away. At least that's the version of the story that I've told myself.
I remember clearly you saying, throw that thing away.
Actually, her version of the story sounds much more like me. Like, I'm not going to build you anything until you get rid of that ugly bookcase.
You know what? I think she's right.
Well, my mom doesn't lie, so.
No, I mean, we're old now. So.
We're very forgetful.
And I will be drawing the winner of the giveaway for the planer later today too. So someone special is gonna get an email from me.
Okay, and we're gonna pick a winner of a Guild project. I'm gonna pick Ryan Murray.
And I'm gonna pick one too because I loved Jeannie's question.
Okay, so Ryan Murray is on the Patreon page. I actually missed his question.
Oh.
And because of that, I'm going to give him a free project.
There you go, Ryan. Ryan, email me, Nicole@thewoodwhisperer.com. And Jeannie, I liked your question about the glue ups. So email me, Nicole@thewoodwhisperer.com, and I'll get you hooked up.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and have a wonderful woodworking weekend. We will catch you next time.
Bye.
Peace out.
You'll get a Guild project.
Everybody gets a Guild project. One for you and one for you.
How much to get the...